So when members of the public are watching, they can see who you are. Thank you.
Okay, Kumar, we're live.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Welcome to the second of three work groups having to do with waste. And I'm going to begin by repeating something I've said many, many times, and that is that recycling and waste in the United States has failed, and it's failed here in Maryland as well. And that was the impetus for putting together this work group that's being chaired by Brooke Learman. And so, just a few administrative things, of course. Number one, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. Number two, as Trish mentioned, please do give us your first and last name, because the public is viewing this and they need to know who all of us are. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Brooke, you have the chair. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Chairman Barve, and thank you for your foresight in setting up this work group and tasking us with coming up with some long-term solutions and hearing from a wide array of viewpoints. So good morning to everybody, Chair Barve, Vice Chair Stein. Thank you so much to Trish and Kristen for helping us get here today. Committee members, fellow Marylanders, this is the second public meeting of the work group on waste reduction and recycling. I'm so pleased to be chairing this work group and working alongside my colleagues, delegates Regina Boyce, Jerry Clark, William Wyville, Jen Terrassa, Drea Harrison, and Sarah Love. The work group is focusing on making Maryland a greener, cleaner, more environmentally just state. So we decided to pull together a series of briefings to hear from experts on different topics associated with the challenges and opportunities that counties are facing with waste reduction and recycling. The goal of these briefings is to create a space for stakeholders from local government, the waste and recycling industry, and advocates and others to share their perspectives and to educate legislators outside of the busy 90-day session so that your input and their input can inform our legislative agenda. The focus of today's briefing, which is the second of three briefings, is reducing trash and specifically talking about plastic waste. First, we'll hear from business leaders about the role that they can play in helping reduce the amount of single-use plastic and the challenges that they face. We'll also hear from experts on extended producer responsibility, also known as EPR, which is a strategy that many countries around the world and now some states are using for waste reduction. And we are looking forward to hearing from everybody, as well as our environmental advocacy organizations who are going to share their thoughts on how we as a state can help residents and businesses move towards zero waste through legislation, regulatory changes, and whatnot. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first panel. We are going to hold all questions till the end of each panel, at which point we will we'll take questions. So our first panel is, we are going to lead off with a business perspective. I'm so delighted to have several business leaders joining us today, representing a wide variety of business viewpoints. So Kaylee Locklear is the president of the Maryland Retailers Association, the Maryland Association of Chain Drugstores, the Tri-State Jewelers Association, and the Maryland Food Industry Council. We'll also hear from Melvin Thompson, the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs and Public Policy at the Restaurant Association of Maryland. And we'll hear from Allie Dysard, the Environmental Partnership Manager at Mom's Organic Market, and Ellen Valentino, the Executive Vice President of the Maryland, Delaware, and DC Beverage Association. So Kaylee, we are going to turn it over to you to start, and I am going to be keeping time. So I will just ask you to wrap up when you have about 30 seconds left. So thanks so much, and turning it over to you, Kaylee. Just need to unmute yourself, maybe. We can't actually hear you. I don't know why. Now you're muted. Do you have headphones in that you need to unplug? No, I don't know. We can't hear you. How about if do you want to like reboot and restart, and we'll try, Melvin, we'll turn it over to you to start with, and then we'll come back to Kaylee. Melvin, are you on? Do I see you?
Hi, this is Melvin. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. And
Thanks.
I apologize. My wife has a Zoom meeting going on simultaneously. I thought she would be finished before this one started. She's not. And so I don't have access to the full video. I do apologize. But as long as you can hear me fine, I think I can go ahead and speak ahead of Kaylee. So everything's coming through okay?
Yep, we hear you fine. And, we know what you look like. All good.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Learman, members of the work group, and committee members, I'm Melvin Thompson, representing the Restaurant Association of Maryland. And we appreciate the opportunity to provide comments and our perspective on some of the waste reduction and recycling issues you'll be examining as part of your work. The Restaurant Association of Maryland is a food service trade group with members that include restaurants, bars, caterers, and other food service businesses. And as I'm sure you know, the COVID-19 shutdown and operating restrictions have devastated the restaurant industry. Many struggling restaurants that couldn't get by on limited carryout and delivery sales have closed permanently. And it remains to be seen how many more will ultimately close if dine-in business doesn't return to pre-pandemic levels by year's end. Given the limited time today, I'd like to provide our perspective on just a couple of issues that have been considered in the General Assembly and are also under the purview of this work group, without getting too much into the details of specific legislation. And I wanted to first address the issue of disposable food service products from our perspective, and that includes what we typically refer to as food service packaging. And for our industry, food service packaging decisions take into account a product's performance at maintaining food temperature and quality, the durability of that product so that it won't collapse or break down from steam or condensation, effective closure or sealing to guard against spillage or leaking or contamination maybe during transport. And it should also be cost effective for our industry's needs. And if the product is also eco-friendly, then that's great. And most cold food packaging decisions require less consideration because most food service packaging is disposed of by customers and not at the restaurant. It's impossible for us to know whether these products are being recycled. It's also important to note that some local recycling programs, as you may have heard in your previous meeting, restrict carry-out food containers in curbside collection because they are often contaminated with residual food. And Maryland does not currently have the composting infrastructure for widespread collection of compostable packaging. And the COVID pandemic has significantly increased demand for disposable food service products, and there have been some supply issues. And CDC guidance encourages use of disposable food service items. And some restaurants have been using disposables for indoor and outdoor dining to satisfy current customer preferences for single-use items. Restaurants that recycle may dispose of such products in their on-premise collection bins. And with the significant growth and popularity of third-party delivery services in recent years, and the COVID-related increase in carry-out and delivery sales, the performance of food service packaging is even more important to our industry. So, our concern is that banning specific products or materials restricts food service packaging options and consequently can affect food quality and customer satisfaction. And one of the other issues regarding food service disposables that we've talked about in the General Assembly is involving plastic straws. And on that issue, we have supported legislation introduced by Delegate Love that would have prohibited food service establishments from providing single-use plastic straws to dine-in customers unless the customer requested a straw. And this legislation was not a product ban, and we viewed it as more of a waste reduction effort. And so that's why we supported that legislation. And then finally, the other issue involving plastics, as you may know, was debated last year and will likely come back in the next session, and that's plastic bags. And as we had shared with the committee, many restaurants use both paper and plastic bags to suit their needs.
Melvin, you have 30 seconds. Thanks.
Okay. For foods that are prone to leaking or spilling, plastic bags are necessary to guard against breakage. They're also used as an additional barrier for hot crabs, steamed seafood, and those types of things. And so, restaurants want to be able to continue using those plastic bags as our needs deem fit. And in closing, I just want to say that, we sincerely appreciate the invitation to share some of our concerns on these issues today, and hope that there will be additional opportunities to provide input to this work group and to build sponsors as you draft legislation that may affect our industry, so that our concerns can be addressed early in the legislative process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Appreciate your comments. Kaylee, you want to try again?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Great.
Sorry about that. So good morning, honorable members of the Environment and Transportation Committee, colleagues, and the public. For the record, my name is Kaylee Locklear. I'm the president of the Maryland Retailers Association, Chain Drugstore Association of the state, Maryland's Food Industry Council, as well as the Tri-State Jewelers Association. Our members are both large and small, and we have a standing partnership with the state's designated main streets, which consist of over 5,000 small businesses. Unfortunately, in 5 minutes, it's nearly impossible for me to address in a meaningful way the litany of issues discussed recently at your first meeting, what our industry is doing regarding sustainability efforts, as every single company sets different goals and has different focuses, manufacturer and supplier changes and challenges that we're facing in light of COVID, and the list goes on. So I'll just do my best to share additional information in writing to you and let you know I am here as a resource. I've worked with many of you for years, and although we must sometimes agree to disagree, we welcome this opportunity. I'd also like to point out there are important representatives missing from this conversation who truly are industry experts, and we would ask that they supply some information, and we will talk to them about that to all of you, or more importantly, ask the committee if they could participate in the next meeting. So speaking of agreeing to disagree, this leads me to the plastic bag ban bill. This past session and prior, we worked very closely with the sponsors in the House and Senate and environmental advocates, some of which are on this call, although it is no secret that we far preferred a 5-cent fee on both plastic and paper, as the industry believes plastic is a better option in terms of carbon emissions, water usage, cost, and environmental impact. However, our coalition worked together. We made concessions collectively and proffered a jointly agreed upon bill. To our immense disappointment, and despite these numerous concessions, the bill this committee and the chamber passed will likely be introduced again in its gutted form, increasing costs on businesses without behavioral change toward paper, which has a whole host of issues as well. This was a genuine effort to work together with all stakeholders. Yet retailers' most important concerns around preemption and helping to cover the cost of paper by setting a price floor were ultimately ignored, and we would implore you all to reconsider. More than ever, Maryland businesses and consumers are struggling with an uncertain economy, and we will continue to oppose pushing significant new costs onto small businesses who, as you are all aware, already operate on incredibly slim margins. These businesses have been hurt the most by the downturn brought on by this pandemic, are hanging on by a thread with precious PPP money, and need help not flat out cost increases. Jumping to the first meeting this committee held on these topics, I heard repeatedly concerns about labeling that I'd further like to unpack. It is important to point out that just because a county or the state does not have certain recycling infrastructure does not mean a product that can be recycled should have recycling information removed. For example, plastic bags can be brought into almost any grocery store to be reused and recycled. Not to mention, there are private drop-off locations and other out-of-state locations with active recycling programs for items such as polystyrene. Another area of concern centers around product stewardship models that literally give the taxing authority of the state over to nonprofits, who in turn profit greatly from overcollection. Their tax return after tax return, year after year, shows millions of dollars that is not expended. It's not returned to taxpayers or even general funds. For years, we have warned against taxing products individually in this fashion, as these programs continue to grow monetarily and expand to other items. We hope also the committee will be willing to discuss with experts technology complementary to mechanical recycling, such as advanced plastics recycling. It's also called chemical recycling. And it's several different technologies that convert post-use plastics to their original building blocks. And by using advanced recycling to produce these outputs, we help preserve the plastic's original value and conserve use of fossil-based resources. I'll conclude by saying thus far, much of our focus, our work that we've done together, has predominantly been the reduction of products, but we must also take a hard look at the other two R's, how we can improve our recycling programs and reuse products via consumer responsibility as well. We appreciate your time and consideration and look forward to our inclusion and further discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kaylee, for your comments and your work on behalf of our retailers, who we all know are struggling, and we continue to think of them and our restaurants. Allie, I'm going to turn it over to you now to speak about the work that you all do at Moms.
All right, can you hear me okay? Yes, okay. All right, thank you. My name is Allie Dysart, and I'm speaking on behalf of Mom's Organic Market. We are an organic grocery chain with 10 stores located here in Maryland, 21 stores total, and over 1,600 employees. Our purpose at Mom's is to protect and restore the environment. To that end, we are committed supporters of reducing single-use plastic packaging and waste through effective legislation, bans, and incentive programs. We'd like to see this work group start with the biggest offenders: plastic bags, single-use restaurant items, and plastic water bottles. We'd also like trash incineration as a form of recycling to be removed from Maryland's recycling portfolio. The banning of EPS foam packaging was a major environmental win for Maryland, and I'm hoping that banning plastic bags statewide in 2021 will be Maryland's next big environmental win. Some solutions I hope this work group will consider are banning plastic bags statewide with a fee or not on paper bags. Moms banned plastic bags in 2005, and we encourage and support a statewide ban in 2021. We'd like to see incentives for food service businesses to switch to compostable or truly recyclable alternatives for disposable items, including containers, cups, straws, and utensils. Seattle implemented this about a decade ago, and at Moms, we only use compostable to-go-ware items, cutlery, and compostable bags, and we're able to work with local Maryland composting companies such as Veterans Compost to carry this program out and support local green businesses in Maryland. We'd like to see a mandatory upon request program set up for single-use items at restaurants, delivery, and takeout. We'd like to see a container deposit legislation explored for Maryland. Of the 10 states that currently have bottle bills in place, most are seeing recycling rates above 70%. I'd like to see the banning of plastic water bottle sales on city and state grounds with bottle refill stations installed for water to encourage container reuse. And I'd like Maryland to remove trash incineration as a form of recycling and continue to work on growing local composting facilities. Last, I'd like the work group to take a look at the state health department codes for bring your own container guidelines, as some of these limit what stores can do to reduce single-use packaging on their own. Plastic is no safer than any other material as it pertains to COVID. So it is important that we don't let COVID derail the amazing work we as a community have been doing to clean up Maryland's plastic and packaging pollution problems. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. And Ellen, turning it over to you now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, listen, thanks for having me. I'm going to try to share my screen and just run through a couple of slides. And, you know, I see this, our industry sees this as a great opportunity to talk about what we're doing. And let me see if I can't do this. Share my screen. Here we are. Did I share it?
Not yet.
Okay, let me try one more time.
It should be a green button where it says share screen.
Yep.
And then you'll have to pick which thing you're sharing.
See here? There we go.
There you go. Yep.
There we go. Thank you. Anyway, thank you for having us. And we, like I said, as an industry, we see this as a great opportunity to tell about some of the good news we're doing here. Just quickly to start the slideshow. There you have my full name there down at the bottom, and anybody that wants to contact me can. Just who we are here in the state, because I always think it's an important reminder of why we care, why when you're talking about us, we want to talk about us. Very significant industry here in Maryland, have several manufacturing facilities and really have a great footprint throughout the state. I know, Delegate, in your district as well, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, one of really the premier manufacturers here in the state. We're proud of that. And just a quick snapshot economically of what we are in the state. And I always think it's an opportunity to talk about this because I think it puts into perspective comments we make and why we do care and some of the things we're doing here in the state. These are the great products we make. If you haven't tried one, they're delicious. We got something for everybody there. From every company. So our environmental footprint and commitment, you know, the industry is really taking a leadership role from a perspective of the environment. And you can see here running the gamut from water reduction commitment, our energy commitment, our fleets. And I talk about our packaging here today, but you can see that in the trucks on the road, a lot of them are hybrid trucks, and a lot of our manufacturing facilities are award-winning with respect to their footprint and green footprint and how they operate their manufacturing facilities here in the state. Again, always I say this, if you want to come see them, we want to have you. And in a better day, I'd love to have the committee out to tour a packaging filing facility, maybe the one in Baltimore City, Delegate Learman. It's a lovely place to be. So we do, our products are, we do make 100% glass packaging, and even the caps. I know that was the last discussion before. The message is keep the caps on. That's not just from us. I think you'll hear that from the waste haulers. I don't want to speak for the environmental groups, but our caps are 100% recycling. So when you're finished with that great beverage, put the cap on, then put it in the recycling bin. Our industry had an announcement early on in the year, and that is pretty significant. What I want to talk about today is, you know, we do want every bottle back. And the issue is how we're going to do that and how do we get there? And this is a commitment of the three major companies. And you're going to see, and I think you're seeing now, some of those things as you walk in public, the public space recycling generally is a partnership with your local bottler, national bottler, or the Beverage Association here myself. So here's our commitment. It's very public. It's on our website by 2025. All our bottles will be 100% recyclable. That is a commitment. We're working towards that. We've made a significant commitment, over $100 million to and with the Recycling Partnership and the Closed Loop Fund to work and help get our bottles back with solutions, with increasing residential recycling, public space recycling, and other matters and other issues that we can come together with. As far as labeling goes, yeah, we have that commitment too. We are going to, and we'll be, again, putting voluntary labeling on our products that they are recyclable. Saving that opportunity point of sale to remind people what to do once they have their best great drink. These are our partners. This is an unprecedented coalition. If you had gone back 10 years ago, the issue would be, wow, would these groups be coming together with the American Beverage Association for the same goal? And I'm not sure the answer would have been yes then, but it's yes today, and we're excited about it. So I want to thank you again, just in closing, keep the caps on. That was a big issue between now and then. And in 2025, you have a level of commitment from our industry that I think is unprecedented. Our bottles are recycling. And we do see and understand the disagreement here. We do not see our products as single use. As an industry, many don't, we don't. And we want our bottles back. They have value in the recycling system. They are recyclable, and they're not single use. So with that, I look forward to answering any questions, and again, appreciate the opportunity to tell the industry's good news.
Great. Well, thank you, Ellen, so much for joining us today. Appreciate it. We have a couple questions, and then I have some questions too. But I'm going to turn it over to our chair first. Chair Barve.
Hi, can you hear me through my headphone? Okay, so two things. Number one, Kaylee, I'm very interested in the technology that you highlighted of chemical recycling. I'd love to have details on that. And of course, what I'm going to do is run it by UMSI. So if you can get the committee the details on that, I'd very much appreciate it. Number two, and this is directed at anybody, and it's another homework assignment. I'd like to know what the relative cost between plastic versus aluminum versus bottles are, and I'd also like to know the cost differential between compostable containers and traditional containers, because I know that there are cost differentials. So you don't have to answer now, but I'd really like to have that information. Just to say something about plastic versus aluminum bottles, I noticed in one of the small grocery stores here in Rockville, and also in Europe earlier this year, many stores offer those as an alternative opportunity. I'm just very curious to know what the cost differential is. And let's see. Finally, Ellen, this one's directed toward you, because I noticed that you made this comment about keep the caps on. In our last briefing, what we discovered, and what I've discovered in looking at some of the containers that I have around the house, the grade of plastic of the cap is different from the grade of plastic of the bottle. And a lot of the MRFs and the people who run those facilities are actually telling me that when I have this big container for, some sort of powder, protein powder, that I really shouldn't do what I've been doing, where I throw the plastic scoop in the container and put the lid on it, that I really should do it all separately. So you don't have to give me an answer right now, but I'd love to know what the industry's perspective is to that.
Sure, I can just give you a quick answer. I can only speak to the products we make and sell with respect to beverages. So I'll get you some information on that. With respect to the other industries and packaging, we're leading by example. So we hope they follow. But yeah, I'll follow up and make sure, at least with respect to your favorite beverages, that message is clear and you're clear that they are recyclable.
Do others have responses to his other inquiries, or?
Yes, Melvin with the Restaurant Association. Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to provide you with that requested information for the cost comparison of compostable versus traditional food containers.
As will we.
One thing, I think that's a great request. One thing I would also like to see is what the cost is in other states that have made changes to their laws. So like if there are states like California or Washington or Oregon or Vermont, I'm curious what happens to the market after the state government steps in to change it, changes the market basically. Because based on the research that we had done in California, when foam was banned, the prices for our non-foam products went down dramatically because so many more of them were needed. So I'm just curious, it'd be helpful to see both products price differentials in the state of Maryland, and then if there are differences outside the state that your national networks have access to, it would be helpful to see that too.
Great idea.
Great. Delegate Love.
Thank you, Chair Learman and Chair Barve, and to our panelists. Thank you all for being here. I have a couple of questions. First, Kaylee, you mentioned certain organizations that are missing. Would love to hear from you what those are. And then second, I had really hoped to hear from you, Kaylee and Melvin specifically, ideas on how we can work together. That was really the whole point of including you in this discussion, is we all need to attack the plastic problem together. We can't recycle our way out of it. We just can't. We cannot keep producing plastics and saying we're going to recycle them when we can't recycle all of them. And recycling just passes the cost onto the consumer or onto the governments. So do you have thoughts on how we can work together on the upfront problem of reducing production? So those are my two questions. Thanks.
Melvin, I don't know if you're going to answer. I'll just go ahead really quick. And as an example, we tried very hard to work together on the bag bill. And one of the main concerns that comes up over and over again, other than food safety, is cost. And when we can work together to mitigate the cost that falls on business, when we eliminate a product and move to a more expensive product, that's something that we're always going to be focused on, and something that we came to you all with. We worked with environmental advocates on, and not only did that price floor help our businesses pay for paper, which is far more expensive, but at the same time, it deters behavior on paper, which I know all of you don't necessarily want consumers using paper as well. The whole point was behavioral change in its entirety. So I'll just start there. Some of the folks that are missing in this conversation, I really wasn't sure who to bring in on this. Like I said earlier, there's so many different focuses from different companies as far as sustainability goes and where their goals are. I think that one of our members could bring a sustainability individual in to talk to you about what that looks like, from carbon emissions to the products that they're using, the changes that they've made. And they have reports, analytical reports every year that show you the progress that they're making. I just couldn't get into all of that with all of our members. I really feel like some of the advanced recycling folks, and to your point, they now do have technology in advanced recycling where we can make products that are 100% recyclable. And I will be getting that information per the chairman's request to all of you. I think you hearing from some of those experts and how that technology has advanced and what they're able to do now would be complementary to the mechanical systems that we have in the state. But always willing to work with you, sit down and try to figure out how we can come together on a bill such as the bag bill that we introduced last year.
Thank you, Bailey.
And Delegate Love, I'm sorry, I was going to answer.
Yeah, good.
Thank you very much. And Delegate Love, I appreciate the question. And I will also reach out to our partners at the National Restaurant Association because they have a coordinator for sustainability issues. And I want to find out from them some of the proactive things that we can do as an industry that would help us address the problem here in Maryland, but also recognize that we have national chain partners who are going to be looking for solutions that will work for them across their systems. And so that's one of the things that I think is important moving forward. We also at the Restaurant Association have members of our industry who are suppliers of products and services to our industry. And so I reach out to them periodically to find out if there are new products on the the horizon that might be helpful for these kinds of issues. I just recently learned from one of our suppliers that there's a new biodegradable straw that's also marine degradable that's made from canola oil. That product is not out yet, but they think it will be out soon. And so those are the kinds of things that we try to do proactively to find alternatives that we might be able to use for purposes of legislation that tries to address this kind of issue.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi, Allie from Moms. Can I just say, so we use compostable cutlery, bags, cups, and all of that at all of our stores. And when we talk to our distributors, it's only a couple of cents difference between a plastic cup and a compostable cup. And I also want to say that advanced recycling is just a fancy way of saying burning plastic. I think Shane from Trash Free Maryland or somebody from Environment Maryland have done a pretty big study on that. Burning plastic is not what we want. It's not recycling. It's basically just releasing toxic chemicals back into the air. So I hope they can give you those reports on that so you can read the full version of that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And Kaylee, I think you mentioned a couple of times that there were other people you thought should be involved in the conversation. So, we do have one more work group meeting. It's getting pretty full, but if you want to send names or ideas and topics, we're happy to see them. And folks can always email in comments and ideas as well, or letters, and we will put all of them together and make sure that the work group and the whole committee has access to all of those materials as well. Delegate Boyce.
Thank you so much. I'm having a bit of an allergy attack, so sorry if I go off screen every once in a while. But I want to start with essentially Delegate Love's point about this being a discussion about really how we can work together, basically knowing what you do and how you do it, so we know how to work together a little more. So I'd like to actually go back to Allie. You talked about a lot what Moms wants, but you really didn't talk about what Moms does as a business as it relates to sustainability. Can you talk just a little bit more about that for everyone here, about what the business is actually doing to be sustainable and what they're like, from what they buy, from what they use versus what they don't use? I think that would be most helpful.
Yeah, so I can tell you about our packaging in plastic. So we banned plastic bags in 2005. We were seeing them stuck in trees, floating in the inner harbor, in waterways, polluting everything. So we banned them in 2005. It was, a pretty easy switch. There are tons of businesses that are making bio bags, biomaterial, biocompostable cutlery, things like that. There's so many on the market these days. And we switched to using biodegradable products. We also were able to find, we have 21 stores. Every single store, we do not have a problem finding compostable facilities to come and pick up our waste, our compost waste. And we invite, since there's not curbside pickup for composting, we invite customers to bring their compost to our stores from home, and we'll help them with that gap in coverage. We work with Veterans Compost, which is a veteran-run and started company. His name's Justin Garrity. He would be great on these calls. And he started his company when he got back from Iraq, and he saw a hole in the market. And we also work with PG County Western Branch, and I believe Howard County just opened up a composting site as well. So I think composting is really the direction we want to go in as far as materials. Burning plastic, like I said, I live in Baltimore City and I drive by the incinerator constantly. It's not something I want to be breathing, and it's not the direction of sustainability that we want to be going into, as burning more plastic. So composting, we also have a lot of bring your own. We encourage, during COVID, we did extensive research on plastic bags, as the plastic bag industry, which is basically the oil and gas industry. They're not seeing so many people on the roads driving, and there's a lot of electric vehicles and renewable energy being used. So they're really pushing plastic going forward, since oil is kind of dying a little bit there. So we did a lot of research on, can you use your own bag? Should you be using a plastic bag when you're shopping at Moms? And COVID lives longest on plastic. So using plastic or switching to plastic, doesn't really help the problem. We still allowed customers to bring in their own bags from home. They could bag it themselves. We have bring your own container for peanut butter, household items, all kinds of things, so that you can bring in an item from home, a glass jar or whatever, and fill up what you need so you can diminish the amount of packaging that you're bringing into your home. Yeah,
So
I mean, we're having.
you work. I mean, so I guess what I'm looking a little bit more for is not your stance. We know your stance is essentially what you're doing, because if this is a business perspective and we want to share ideas. So what you're saying is, for instance, Moms uses the bulk shopping method where you bring your own whatever it is and you fill up by the pound or by the liter or by the ounce, and things like that. You know, do you, for instance, do they make an effort to, as much as possible, not purchase products that are considered like a single use, other than like plastic bottles, single use, like quick trash litter products? So I'm just trying to get ahead on like that. I mean, certainly know your stance, but just trying to get an idea about your model, and then I'll ask my next question so we can move on.
Yeah, so if we do have single use items in the store, they're compostable.
Okay, thanks. So my next question was essentially for Ellen. You talked about everything, all bottles essentially being recyclable and 100% recyclable. I guess I'm trying to, and you say you want all your bottles back. The question is what is keeping you from getting all your bottles back, and what do you think you need to do for you to get all your bottles back, including the caps?
Yeah.
And examination fit into that?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. I'm still
No, it's okay.
learning
No.
protocol, Zoom protocol here. Just a quick backup there. You know, from a manufacturing in Baltimore City, I want you to know that we are working in partnership, things we can work together. When the city had to bring down its residential recycling, it's of great current concern to us. We've reached out, and if you notice, we're working hard to make sure that we get the word out where people can recycle, such as yourself. And I think in the coming weeks, you may see our increased efforts, maybe even at point of sale. So, you know, during this time, as the city moves forward and comes through this, I want you to know those are the kind of things I think we can work together. With respect to our plastics, I mean, if you even hold a bottle in and of itself, at least the products I represent, you can even feel the lightweight plastic, the light weighting of the plastic. As you know, the packaging is 30% in and of itself. How do we get our bottles back? I do think there needs to be a renewed effort and focus on recycling. I do think we can, if pushed hard, can recycle our way out and, you know, can really do an educational perspective. So public space recycling, a reinvented, renewed, you know, residential recycling. And then maybe there are things that need to be put on the table and talked about. But I think first and foremost, you got to meet the consumer where they want to be met. And you've got to really, you do have to take in consideration the impact it would have on businesses. You know, what do the consumers want? And how do you meet them at the curb? How do you meet them when they're at work? How do you meet them when they're at the park? I think that really needs to be relooked at. And I think the city's going to do that. And I think in the next couple of months, there'll be good news and a better direction. We hope it would be part of that conversation. But you got to, it's not just about us as businesses, it's what the consumers want. I mean, I know that people want less plastic. We're doing our part in that we're reducing the amount of plastic that's made even to a bottle. But, you know, people like to touch it. People love their water in a bottle. And unfortunately, our products that we make them across the city, and I see Prince George's County down there, that's a different company. I can't leave them out or I'll get in trouble. Our products come in a package. So we're going to continue to, through innovation, one company has a plant-based bottle. So there are things we can work together on. I feel good about it. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ellen. And I think I'm just going to leave this comment here. And I know some people don't like to hear this, but I like to say it because it's true. You essentially said meet people at the curb. And I think people buy these products because they're convenient. And convenience is, you know, I see Delegate Learman laughing, you know, convenience is the deal of the day. And so bottles are convenient and single use items are convenient. And so when you say meet folks at the curb, I would argue that they don't want to be met at the curb because it's convenient enough to have the bottle or the plastic, drink it, and then dispose of it and not have to worry about it. So we say meet them at the curb, we have to also meet them at their convenience. And I hope we're thinking about that. And I know Callie is talking about that too when she talks about the need for the bags. It's a story of convenience, and we have to really talk about the convenience factor. Thanks.
Yeah, great.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Boyce. And I'm gonna, we have a few more people with questions, but I'm gonna pose one question first because I think this is a good place to put it, which is that, yes, people like water bottles and plastic bags, but we also lived for a long time and did just fine without individual water bottles and plastic bags. And one of the reasons I think that they are so superfluous and so omniscient and everywhere, omnipresent, I guess is the word, is that people don't see the cost. We aren't actually, when you go to purchase a bottle of water or you get a free plastic bag, you as a consumer are not actually paying the full cost, right? There are hidden costs all along the way. And so I guess my question, and one of the things that I'd like to hear from some of the industry folks, is who should bear that cost? Who should be paying for the recycling bags that gum up the machines in all of our municipal recycling centers? Who should be paying the cleanup costs for waterways and for our neighborhoods? Right now, we're putting so much of that burden on local governments, which means that we are putting the burden on taxpayers. So these are hidden costs that local governments are feeling right now. With the collapse of the recycling ecosystem as well, we are not shipping all of our waste to places we can't see them in other countries. So much of the cost has been borne by, let's say, third world countries who are underdeveloped that are taking this waste. The cost is being borne by communities of color where the plastic processing plants are, and the cost in real dollars and cents terms are being borne by local governments right now. And so I'm curious, who do you think should bear the cost, and how should we be sharing the cost in a more equitable way, Melvin and Kaylee and Ellen? Because it doesn't, right now, even though it's cheaper for restaurants and retailers and Pepsi and Coke to have these low-cost plastic items, it's not cheaper for other entities of society and in the economy. So I'd like to hear from you why you think local governments and other sectors of the economy and populace should be bearing that cost, rather than some of that cost going on to grocery stores or restaurants or what have you to pay a cent more, or to pass that cent on to consumers so that there's more transparency in how much it actually costs to have a compostable item that isn't then going to be more costly at the local government level. So could you talk a little bit about, and I mean this sincerely, like I would like to know who you think should bear that cost burden and how it should be shared.
I'm glad to start there. In no way do we believe that it should fall solely on local government. We're all in this together. Our industry recognizes that very sincerely. No longer do we live in a world where you can be a brand or a company and not feel consumer pressure. And there is a lot of conversations going on to all of the points that you just made, and the industry is responding as rapidly as possible. And this is what I kind of alluded to earlier. There's so much cross-industry innovation and collaboration going on, trying to keep up with all of these policies and consumer demand as it becomes more vocal. And, I would say that everybody is going to feel that cost. And to your point, and I think you hit the nail on the head, everybody feels that in some way. So if we move from a product that is cheaper to something that's more expensive, everybody is going to feel that cost in some way. I think the ultimate goal, though, is to try to create and go back to products that are 100% recyclable. And we're starting to get there, which is really exciting. I will make sure, again, that you get information about advanced recycling, and hopefully there will be a person that will talk to you about that and what they're doing with those materials. But I don't want it to come across in any way that our industry thinks that we should not be responsible for this. We're investing tons of money. Every company, again, has a different sustainability plan and how they invest money in all of these products and concerns. So please just know that they are spending money right now, and we are thinking through this with all of you as technology is rapidly progressing.
Thank you.
And this is Melvin with the Restaurant Association. Thank you very much for that question. This is certainly something that we would want to discuss internally with our Government Affairs Committee, which represents various segments of the industry, to get their feedback so that I can speak for them and just not personally. But many of our restaurants are doing their part to recycle. Many of them recycle their cardboard, their glass, their cans, even their used fryer oil that can be used to make other products. But one of the challenges that we have within our industry is that there are various price points, and we've heard from some operators who have been tacking on a surcharge for disposables so that they can offer more sustainable products, even despite the fact that they're more expensive. And there are some menus that have higher price points where the operator is able to absorb the cost of those products. The real challenge comes in for the operator who is a smaller operation with very low price points on their menu, and their profit margin is only about 5%. That's where it becomes very difficult for them to absorb the cost or pass that cost onto their customers when there is so much competition and people are very concerned about menu price increases, because that drives away customer traffic. And so there are a lot of things at play for different operators based on their different business models. But I think it is a worthy question, and I will certainly have this discussion with our Government Affairs Committee so that we can provide you with more of an official answer representing their concerns.
Thank you.
Melvin.
Just quickly, because I know you have another important part of the agenda you want to cover today, because EPR is an important discussion to have around packaging as a whole. But just quickly, know that we do think it's our industry's and part of our industry's responsibility. You see that with our partnership commitments. I mean, over $100 million, some of which, I venture to say that, our hope is that Maryland will be able to touch and feel some of those partnerships as well. So do I think there's a responsibility on behalf of the industry? Yeah, I think we're leading by example. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, with respect, and I know that there is disagreement, so I'm couching that before there may be an uproar. We don't see ourselves as single use, nor do many others. We're recyclable. And if you go to the store, try all the new products. The growing market is in seltzers and aluminum cans. So you see an industry making a change. We've made a decision to choose that packaging over others. So we're proud of where we're going. Know we can do more. Look forward to the conversation and appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we have 5 more questions, and then we're going to move on to the next panel. So I'm going to ask the responses to keep it short so we can move forward. But I think this is a really good discussion, so I'm glad we're having it. Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Delegate. My question is quick. It's for Allie. Allie, you mentioned that Seattle has an innovative recycling program. I was wondering if you could get the work group more information about that.
I'm sorry, the question cut out. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, I think you had mentioned that Seattle has an innovative recycling program, maybe focused on containers, and it would be helpful to get more information about that program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say that they actually also make money off of, they do composting, and they're able to sell the compost at Home Depots and bag it up and resell it back to the community. So it's full circle with the food packaging item back to your garden. So I'll send that to you.
Great, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Delegate Jacobs.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I got a question. For years, we've been certainly promoting the use of reusable bags. And, my 10 years over there, I probably brought home a couple hundred from Annapolis, the reusable grocery bags, et cetera. And during this pandemic, there was certainly an emphasis on discouraging the use of those bags in grocery stores. So I'm wondering how that plays in. I heard Allie speak that she was encouraging the use of those bags as long as the customer was putting the goods in themselves. But I know over here on the shore, there many of the establishments were discouraging the use of these reusable bags. So I'm just wondering, especially from Callie, Melvin, and Allie, where that has put this whole position of reusable bags versus plastic.
I can say that there were a lot of unfounded kind of marketing quips from the plastic and oil industries about the dangers of reusable bags, but there isn't actually any data to back that up. Greenpeace put out a report. I can send that to you as well. And CDC even said that it wasn't a thing. As long as you wash your bags like you should do anyways, you can continue to use them. And COVID lives the longest on plastic. So once it's on the plastic, it can last up to 3 days. So it's not really the alternative of choice.
If I may as well, so respectfully, our grocery employees have been on the front lines through this pandemic. And as the CDC waffled back and forth with regard to surfaces and how long COVID lived on, name a surface, employees also began to be very concerned. So the policies that exist in grocery stores, I think outside of moms, for the most part still are, if you want to bring a reusable bag in, you may touch that bag and use it. But for employees' safety, and still there's quite a bit of information going back and forth there, that the policy right now is that you may bring the bag in, but our employees are not yet touching those bags.
And Delegate Jacobs, from the restaurant industry perspective, we have many brands that will not take a customer's reusable bag across the counter to fill with their food products because they just don't know about the cleanliness of that bag, what it may have been used for previously with grocery shopping, raw meats and other things, and may not have been washed, and they don't want to, be accused of causing foodborne illness when it could have really been because it was a dirty bag. And it is for that reason during the plastic bag debate that we had also asked to be able to use maybe plastic bags as a protective barrier when placing ready-to-eat foods in a bag that a customer brings in that is reusable that they prefer to use for the purchase.
I appreciate that. I know that, this whole pandemic has put a whole new light on the use of reusable bags. So it's just wondering what your perspective was, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Now we're going to go to Delegate Weigel.
Thank you. I was thinking Jerry was next, but so I was glad to hear Kaylee say that there are people missing from the discussion, because the last briefing we heard a comment in regards to shutting down incinerators, and then I heard a comment this time again about incineration should be removed from the state's portfolio, and the comment that burning plastics releases toxins into the air. I can agree with that statement if we're talking about old technology, but there's a lot of new technology and scrubbers and other protections that weren't in place when the Brescos of the world were developed. So I think today you can safely incinerate refuse. I know Washington County was looking at producing refuse-derived fuel and a gasification plant at their landfill a few years back. It didn't materialize, but it was an option that they were seriously considered. And I know other companies have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in safely burning plastics and other waste in manufacturing processes and elsewhere. So I think we can all agree that burying trash is a thing of the past, and we do need to find alternatives. But I don't like the assumption from the get-go that incineration is not safe and shouldn't be part of the state's portfolio. So I think if there's an industry that's obviously missing from this whole discussion, it's that industry. And I'd love to hear from them. And if any of you folks in the business community are aware of anyone that does safely burn refuse or incinerate it, I'd love to hear from them. I mean, we've got tons and tons of coal-fired generating plants sitting all over this country that have been idled. Hundreds of billions of dollars spent on those plants with scrubbers in place. And I just wonder if we couldn't have some sort of an adaptive reuse of those type of facilities. I mean, we have one sitting here in Washington County it's been shuttered years ago because of, burns coal. So I think on the bigger picture, I mean, there's an opportunity. You want to talk about reuse, let's look at reuse of these old generating facilities to potentially convert them to somehow recycling waste.
Thanks, Delegate. Delegate Clark.
Thank you very much. I want to go back for a second to Brooke's question about who should bear the cost on some of the things. When I was in local government, I had a good saying when we were talking about budget issues and who should pay for this and who should pay for that. And it was what we were basically doing was moving the air around in the balloon. I think when we start the discussion about who's going to pay and who should be liable, that's basically what we're doing. If you say, why should local government bear the cost? I agree with you that is a struggle for a lot of local governments. But it also, basically, local governments are the people, are the consumers. The folks that come into the stores and buy things and pay deposits. They're the consumers. They're the taxpayers. Whether they pay it in the stores in higher prices, or they pay it in the store because the manufacturers and the distributors have to charge higher prices, it all still goes back to the one common denominator, and that's the citizens, who are the consumers and the taxpayers. So ultimately, however we look at the liability of that, it's the consumer and the citizen out there that's going to bear the cost, whether it's done at the beginning of the system or at the end of the system. So I think we need to identify who is the most efficient and can do it in the most efficient and cost-effective way to recycle and do these items. That's just my opinion on that. I just, because ultimately I know it comes back to us as the consumers to pay for it. My next question was, Brooke, you asked for some information about out in California where they switched to more compostable products and stuff and things like that. And I also would be interested in knowing, as the demand for the more compostable products increased, what effect does the production of them items at the manufacturing level, how does that affect the environment as a whole as to global warming and effects on the community? I mean, are they produced in a way that that's environmental friendly, or does it have any more of an effect on the environment? Because the last thing we want to do is manufacture stuff that has a worse effect on the environment, but yet is more easy to recycle. So it's a full schema thing there, and I'd like to see a little bit of information on that.
That's a great question, and I'm guessing that perhaps either the folks at the Product Stewardship Institute or some of our environmental advocates can give us some information on that.
If we could get some information on that, I would like it.
Great.
And the young lady from Moms, and what I would like to do is if you could maybe offline send us some of your locations, because I've never been to one of your stores and I would like to go. So something that would be close to Southern Maryland that I could go and see. And I had one question on product liability. If you allow customers to bring containers into the store to fill up with bulk items, does that include dry goods and also prepared foods? And if it does include prepared foods and a consumer brings their own container in and leaves with it, is there a product liability there still for the store? Or if the container is contaminated in some way, shape, or form, is there, how do you, if there's a product that's spoiled or something like that, how do you differentiate and who has the responsibility and the liability?
Yeah. So for the bringing in your own items, yes, it's dry goods, it's bulk liquids for like household cleaners, things like that. And they would put the items into the container themselves out on the store floor. And I'd be happy to take you on a tour of any of our stores and kind of show you the systems in place that we have and the safety nets, that kind of thing. And then for to-go food items, we have for here cups and bowls and things like that. So what we do is we just take the for here bowl of salad or whatever and hand it to the customer. So nothing is coming across the barrier where the food is being prepared. It's pretty easy. You just hand them the container as you would normally, and then it's on them to transfer that into their own container and then put the for here bowl into our busing tub that's there, kind of the station with the condiments. So very, very easy. It just takes a little bit of maneuvering and figuring out what works. And then we're able to follow all the health code laws for that.
Okay, because that was kind of interesting to me. And do you have stores near Southern Maryland, or where are your stores mainly located?
We have them all over the state, yeah, and we're about to open a couple of more. So I'd be happy to take you on a tour. I can find out which one is closest to you.
Yeah, because I started my career out in the grocery business, so I'd be very interested in seeing your operation.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So our final two questions are going to be from Delegate Lehman and then Chairman Barbay.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chair Barbay and Work Group Chair Lehrman. This is a great discussion. I'm so glad I was able to join. Delegate Clark, I'm going to do a little bit of bragging very quickly. So Mom started in my district in College Park. And Scott Nash actually began what is now a very successful company in 3 or 4 states by delivering fresh food from, I think it was his mom's station wagon. It's a great story. And so I hope you find a store near you because it's a wonderful green business. Having said that, Melvin Thompson, one product that has not been discussed at all, and I think there have been very limited laws in the Maryland, Virginia, DC area on this, but it's getting to be a bigger and bigger issue, especially with takeout food and curbside carry out with COVID, and that is utensils, compostable utensils. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that maybe the only jurisdiction locally that has a law on that is Montgomery County. And so, two-part question. One, would you support legislation or your association support legislation like you talked about Delegate Love's straw legislation where you have to actually ask for utensils or the business has to say, do you need utensils? Because the thing is, most people are taking their food home now, especially at this time, and they have utensils at home. I always am sorry that I don't think to say, oh, by the way, I don't need utensils. This just happened to me yesterday. And I have this growing sort of, surplus pile of utensils. They're all plastic. They're not compostable. So could you just talk a little bit about that? Does Montgomery County, in fact, have a law? How is it working in terms of, alternative compostable utensils and the cost?
Thank you very much for that question. And that is an issue that we are going to be discussing internally because Montgomery County, while they had, as part of their previous ban on expanded polystyrene products, they also required that all food service disposables be either recyclable in the county or compostable. And so there were a lot of operators who were able to find recyclable alternatives for those utensils. There was a problem with some clarification needed on straws and whether they could be polylactic acid or PLA, and some lids and things like that. But Montgomery County has also recently introduced legislation that would restrict the use of hard or rigid forms of polystyrene, number 6, which you probably heard their Director of Environment talk about at the previous meeting. And so we're trying to get some clarification on that. Some of the bill language that they're using is a little bit confusing, and it's unclear right now whether that applies to utensils or only containers and beverage cups. And so we don't really have a lot of information regarding the performance of compostable alternatives. Some of those are made from plant-based materials and cornstarch, but we'll have to check with our suppliers for a little more information on that issue as we continue to work on it in Montgomery County. They're the only Maryland jurisdiction right now that is going a step beyond with legislation related to those types of issues.
Great, thank you for that. And just the follow-up is, would you consider supporting a bill, or you can think about it, that would say that the business has to ask the customer, do you need utensils?
You know, I think that is a legitimate question, especially when we are trying to talk about reducing unnecessary waste, and the rationale would be the same as the reason we supported Delegate Love's bill regarding plastic straws upon request. And I'll be happy to take that before my Government Affairs Committee for consideration and get back to you on that.
I really appreciate it. Would save your members money, obviously. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for raising the issue. We appreciate the heads up and look forward to working with you.
Great, Chairman Barve.
Yeah, this is not so much a new question as it is a restatement of my old question. I happened to find this bottle that I picked up in London, and it's at a establishment where you could buy water in plastic bottles or aluminum containers. And I don't remember, I knew I was going to need this, so I threw it in a suitcase. I don't remember what the price differential was, but I seem to remember that it was a quarter more, maybe 20 US cents more to buy it in this form. So when I asked the question about the cost differential between plastic bottles and aluminum bottles, I really meant more from the perspective of the consumer. And the reason I say that is that if we go to a model of requiring this kind of container, the consumer has to pay whatever that additional cost is, which I'd like for you to identify. On the other hand, if we don't do this and recycling facilities have to recycle it, then there's a cost to them, which I have a fractional share of as a taxpayer. So that's essentially the economic analysis I want to undertake. I want to know what the price differential for me as a consumer would be to use this container versus the cost of government differential that I would pay for recycling a plastic bottle versus an aluminum bottle as a taxpayer. That's the equation I want to get numbers for. So I just wanted to say that to clarify what my intent was.
That's a great question. Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for your questions. Thanks for your answers and your presentations. We're going to move now on to the second panel, which is also about reducing. As you know, I think Ali put this in the chat and Delegate Weibel mentioned it. We do still need landfills and incinerators and other types of, and other facilities to dispose of our trash. But one of the things that this work group is looking at is how can we reduce the need for those expensive, in many different ways, apparatus. So I'm excited to have several folks from around Maryland joining us today. Pat Hersey, the founder of Less Plastic Please in Howard County, Melanie Thomas, an organizer with the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, Martha Ainsworth, the chair of the Maryland Sierra Club Zero Waste Committee, and Shane Robinson, who we all know, the executive director of Trash Free Maryland. So they will each give short presentations, and then we will have time for some questions. Pat, take it away.
Yes, hello everyone and good morning. Chairman Barvet, Vice Chair Stein, and members of the committee. It's my pleasure to speak with you today. I'm speaking on behalf of our friends from Clean Water Action, and I'm going to take a zoom out view on this and talk about the policies to reduce single-use plastic in relation to social justice. And I have some slides to show. Works. Okay, so social justice simply means everyone's human rights are respected and protected. This is not happening with single-use plastic and the plastic pollution crisis. For example, whites experience 17% less pollution caused by their consumption of goods, while Blacks and Hispanics experience 56 and 63% respectively more pollution than their consumption would generate. This pollution advantage for whites was first documented 40 years ago. Dumped and burned rubbish, especially plastic waste, is responsible for the death of one person every 30 seconds in developing countries. In 2019, the equivalent of 68,000 shipping containers of American plastic recycling waste were exported to developing countries that mismanage more than 70% of their own plastic waste. Since China's national sword, Maryland in the Mid-Atlantic region's new hotspot is Turkey, where waste pickers are averaging $6.50 a day. We cannot continue to play this plastic waste shell game. As we all know, there is no way, but there are solutions. The Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which is federal legislation, was actually designed so states could pull out and use any or all of these bills. It includes an extended producer responsibility bill, EPR. And this particular bill is a full EPR. There's a bag bill that imposes a fee on all carry-out bags, a bottle bill that proposes at least a 10-cent charge. And all these types of bills have a successful track record for reducing plastic. And you'll learn more about EPR in the next segment. The Pew Charitable Trust in System IQ study titled Breaking the Plastic Wave calls for moving towards a circular economy and describes an 8-point system change that would reduce plastic ocean pollution by 80% in 20 years. This graph shows a delay of just 5 years would add 80 million metric tons of plastic into our oceans. The plastic crisis is getting worse, and nothing we are doing now is working. We have the technology to tackle this crisis. We need the industry and government resolve to do so. I bring out that Breaking the Plastic Wave study because it's a painfully honest way that we can reach a solution. And it's not an easy lift, but it's doable. And I must say that chemical recycling is not included in this solution because chemical recycling is actually an energy consuming process. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Pat. I'm going to turn it over to Melanie now. Melanie, thanks for joining us.
Right. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are good to go.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Good morning again, Chairman and members of the committee and the public. I'm Melanie Thomas, an organizer with the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, and I'm honored to be here among all of you. The Land Trust focuses on equitable housing development in underserved communities, but it also places health, environmental health as a top priority. We cannot live and have healthy homes in sick environments. Our land trust is committed to advancing zero waste efforts, which will push our city on a path to a just transition. Again, I want to thank, I live in the 46th district. I want to thank our district leader, Delegate Lehrman, for the invitation and for all of her advocacy, to really push zero waste, and Delegate Robin Lewis as well. So we have all read and heard that the United Nations estimates that by 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish by weight. So it's clear that, many of you have already said it, but recycling alone, we can't recycle our way out of this problem that is so big and expansive. Currently, $5.2 trillion is provided to the fossil fuel industry, and that is what's driving and pushing this plastic boom that we are seeing and that we're paying for. This has to end if we as a city and state and nation really want to address the issue of waste. Now let's bring it back to our community. As I said, I live in the 46th district. I live in Curtis Bay, where I live near the Bresco incinerator, the medical waste incinerator, an open air coal pile. I have so many other chemical industries that are right here. I suffer from respiratory conditions, and my family, my neighbor died of cancer, lung cancer, never smoked. So there's so many things, and this is really personal to me. This movement and this effort is really personal, because we really have to, and we need to change. We need to stand up. The burden is placed on Black and brown communities and people of color, as Pat just stated, and it has to end. It's not equitable at all. And we can't, if we look at Baltimore right now, Baltimore really hasn't done the best. We're on a path, right, to what we want to see, but we have not done the best. We haven't really educated enough on how to recycle effectively. We haven't really taught our citizens to really efforts to reduce recycling. But again, as Pat stated, we need a bag bill and a bond bill and different legislations to really help stop the production of these things, because as they continue to increase, again, the burden is on the Black and brown communities, and that is unfair. If you look at the public housing, people in public housing are not offered recycling. It's only trash. So that's another thing. We helped to create the Fair Development Plan for Zero Waste, which City Council unanimously adopted for Baltimore City. And that plan, entails and lays out all of these things and these efforts to really help move us to an equitable transition away from incineration and landfilling. Right now, we are all stuck in this mentality of it's either landfill or incineration, but we need to open ourselves up to other alternatives like composting, recycling. Chemical recycling, no, is not the solution. And I'm posting in the chat right now a link to Gaia, which is an organization that we're partnered with, Global Alliance for Incineration Alternatives. The chemical recycling was developed and is pushed by the fossil fuel industries. They're getting all that money to now mask a problem that they're creating. And that is not the solution. That is not what we want to see. Our current, and right now we see that we're really in a crisis in light of COVID, with the trash and the recycling actually being put on hold and being suspended until November, where people are being asked to drop off their their recycling. Again, the convenience factor. I can't remember. I think it's Delegate Regina talked about convenience. And we can't. Recycling bins are not free currently. So that's a problem in itself. And if people are not able to go and have a vehicle to pick these up and whatever, and then if it's not collected in their area, then it ends up as trash. So again, we really have to get to the root of the problems. We talk about Baltimore's failed racist system that we see, and it's led to so many health inequities. disparities. In 2017, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation published a report from the emissions, just one emissions, that's 2.5 particulate matter from the Bresco incinerator. They said that it has been linked to cost. They put a number on it, 55 million every single year in health damages related to respiratory illness. That is a problem. And that, when I saw that number, I realized we're paying to be polluted on, and then now we're paying with our health and our lives. And when will this end? When will it end? We have to fix this system by committing to a just transition to zero waste and end Baltimore's contract with the Bresco incinerator. It's our city's worst air polluter. Getting rid of Bresco is not going to be the end. Like, we still have to implement, and we need the infrastructure in place to really address our trash issue. Our plan for zero waste, it calls for 90% diversion from burning and burying, an end to the racist and equitable waste system, starting with, again, the Bresco incinerator, adopting policies and practices that will protect our resources and our environment. We're burning precious resources that we could bring in a market and look at local mission-based recyclers to really reuse, right? That's the reuse and reproduce these materials, these precious materials that we're burning and burying.
Great. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Really powerful testimony. Thanks so much for joining us today. Martha Ainsworth, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Barve, members of the work group. Thank you for inviting the Sierra Club to offer our perspective on reducing single-use plastic and for sponsoring this excellent series of discussions. We've learned from the excellent presentations last month exactly how bad an environmental problem single-use plastics are. Plastic's durable, and single-use plastic may be used for 5 minutes, but it stays with us forever. The extraction of fossil fuels, the production of plastic, and disposal of plastic contributes in a major way to climate change. It's an air and water pollution problem, a harm to wildlife problem, a waste and litter problem, a human health problem, and an environmental justice problem. Not much plastic can actually be recycled, and to the extent that it's recycled, it is downcycled. It's not a closed loop. And also, local governments and taxpayers are picking up the bill to clean it up and to recycle it. But there is some hope. The single-use plastic is a relatively recent problem. In the first 20 years of my life, there were no plastic carryout bags, straws, cutlery stirrers, or plastic water bottles, and no plastic roadside litter. We survived without these conveniences and their repercussions. And further, there are reusable and non-plastic alternatives for these products. And some of the products aren't even really necessary. Now, Maryland has already made some progress in passing legislation banning products with microbeads and banning single-use expanded polystyrene food containers. And in Maryland, as in other states, policy has been built from the bottom up on local experience and implementation. So what other policies are a high priority? I'm going to try to screen share here in just a second. How do I do this? I'm a novice at this, so bear with me. Here we go. Can you see that?
Nope.
Okay.
If it doesn't work, I would just keep going.
Keep going, okay.
Minutes.
Yeah,
All right.
and Martha, we can have someone share it for you. So if you just keep talking, okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what other policies are high priority? Plastic, first of all, plastic carryout bags. The statewide Plastic and Packaging Reduction Act almost made it through the General Assembly in 2020, banning plastic carryout bags, but stripped of a required charge for other bags. Yet we know that even the prospect of a small fee on a bag can be very effective in changing behavior. We have evidence from observational surveys that a 5-cent fee on carryout bags reduces their use and increases the use of reusable bags or going bagless. And we showed this during the session with respect to Montgomery County's 5-cent fee on plastic and paper bags. We also saw that at Aldi and Lidl, where they charge for all bags and do not offer plastic bags, almost everybody avoided the fee by bringing their own bag or not using a bag at all. So we'll soon know the behavioral impact of two other approaches. Howard County is going to be launching its 5-cent charge on plastic carryout bags next month, and the city of Baltimore will roll out its ban on plastic bags and fee on other bags in January. The second priority, plastic straws, stirs, cutlery, and condiment packets. Plastic straws and stirs are among the top 10 items in beach cleanups. They're not recyclable, and neither petroleum-based nor plant-based plastics break down into compost in the natural environment. Paper straws and reusable straws are alternatives that are out there. Now, plastic straws and stirrers should be banned. Other straws, plastic cutlery, and condiment packets should be provided only when requested by the customer, not as a default. Charles and Prince George's counties already have plastic straw and stirrer bans, and similar bans are on request for items that are not banned are under discussion in Montgomery and Howard counties this fall and spring. On request, straws can reduce straw usage by 30 to 40% or more. Third, the bottle bill. And this is where I wish I had my slides. Back in 2015, nearly 4 billion beverages were being sold in Maryland annually. And we estimated that only about a quarter, about 28% of containers were being recycled. So 3 billion beverage containers per year in Maryland were being landfilled, incinerated, or littered. But in contrast, the recycling rate in the 10 states that have bottle bills averaged 75% versus Maryland's 28%. A bottle bill would nearly triple the recycling rate in Maryland for beverage containers and directly reduce roadside litter and the plastic is washing into the ocean. So these are three priorities for the near term, but we need to launch action on extended producer responsibility for plastic packaging, which the next speakers will discuss.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. At the federal level, we need to hit the pause button on increased plastic production, something we can't do unilaterally in Maryland. Maryland Sierra Club and Beyond Plastics is sponsoring a webinar on the Federal Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act on September 29th. We'd like to invite you all. So with Senator Tom Udall, one of the sponsors. And the elements of this bill, as Pat Hersey said, are a roadmap for actions that states and local jurisdictions can follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And next, we are going to hear from our final panelist, Shane Robinson.
Thank you, Delegate Learman, and thanks, Chairman Barve, Chairman Stein, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee and the work group for having this meeting. My name's Shane Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of Trash Free Maryland, which is a 501c3 nonprofit seeking to reduce and hopefully eliminate someday trash and litter in the state of Maryland. And we're happy to be part of this panel. First, I just want to say, and it's something I hadn't planned on addressing, but chemical recycling, it's been mentioned several times. Melanie posted a link. I posted another link. There's some recent reports out on this that I think are pretty good. It's being touted as chemical recycling, but it's kind of a misnomer. It's actually PTF, or plastic to fuel. So the way a lot of consumers, in my view anyway, view recycling as if you're turning plastic into plastic, if it's plastic recycling. There are other types of downcycling. Chemical recycling is actually hugely detrimental to the environment and comes at a huge carbon emissions cost. And with climate change, which is a little bit outside the purview of this work group, but with climate change, that's a big deal. At the beginning of this work group, Chairman Barve mentioned that recycling is not working. I think he's right. That doesn't mean that we can't improve it, but we have to look to reduce a lot of these substances at the source. Martha mentioned, the changes in her lifetime about the use of plastic. And, you know, I agree. And we know in 1950, there were about 1.5 million metric tons of plastic being produced globally. In 1989, it was 100 million. In 2002, it was 200 million. In 2014, it was 311 million metric tons of plastic being produced. About half of that is single-use plastic. And we know that about only 9% of that has been recycled. So that leaves 91% that's being either going into the landfill, being incinerated, or ending up in the environment at large. We're concerned about all of it at Trash Free Maryland, of course, because of our mission, particularly the plastic that ends up in the environment at large. We know by 2050, there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than there are fish by weight. And we know the human cost and the ecological cost, but also the human cost of this. So we have to figure out a way to limit our plastic production. It's been talked about consumer convenience. I don't think consumers are asking for this. You know, you look at grocery stores 20 years ago and you were buying produce, it was mostly not in plastic. Now you're taking your arugula out of plastic clamshells. People aren't asking to have their bananas and oranges peeled and then put into plastic. There is a push for more plastic, and part of that is the global economics of petroleum and the oil and gas industry. You know, the oil and gas industry, the cost of oil took a nosedive during the pandemic. So the proportion of profits that come from that industry now has shifted more towards plastic. So you're going to see increased plastic production. Part of it is PPE. Okay, during COVID-19, there's been a huge increase in single-use plastic. Some of it is PPE, but a lot of it is food service packaging that Melvin alluded to earlier, which is the single-use plastic packaging that gets sent away when at curbside pickup. That's increased dramatically. That's one reason why we're in favor for opt-in single-use food utensils, for example, and other plastic items should be opt-in. I do want to hit those points because that was my original talk before we got off on these other discussions, but Trash Free Maryland supports the plastic bag ban. We support a lot of the single-use bills that Martha mentioned. The beverage container deposit bill is a good one. We would like to see that pass. We want to continue to work on that. I'll mention a comment by Kaylee earlier regarding the bag bill. It was a pleasure to work with the Retailers Association. I think we worked well with them. They worked well with us. It was an honest effort to get the paper bag price floor included in this. And we agree with that for the reasons that she stated, and we would like to see it. But barring that, we would like to see a ban on plastic bags at the point of sale, because it's something that's easy to do. You've already done it in this committee. The House of Delegates already did it. Something that's easy to do to reduce the single-use plastics that are ending up in the watershed, in our neighborhoods, and breaking down into microplastics and then hurting human health, not to mention other animals and the ecology at large. So that's all I want to say.
Great. Okay, thank you. We only have one question for this panel right now. I'm going to ask that perhaps they stick around so that we can then move on to our third panel, because some folks on that panel have a time crunch. And then we are able to ask questions of everybody of the final two panels at the end as well. But Chairman Barve did have a question for this panel.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this is really kind of a reiteration of a question I believe I asked at the first work group of somebody, and I haven't heard an answer to it. I realize that single-use plastics are the majority of plastic pollution, but there's still a lot of uses of plastic that we can't get rid of. For example, this syringe for delivering medicine is something that we're not going to be able to replace. So this is always going to be with us. The question I asked then, and I would ask again, and if you need to do the research and send us the answer, that's perfectly fine as well. I want to know why landfilling the plastics we cannot recycle and cannot eliminate from our lives. I want to know why landfilling is such a bad alternative, because it seems to me, and I could be wrong about this, it seems to me that this is an inert substance that's going to stay in the landfill for thousands of years without degrading. If that's the case, this may be the best way to sequester a product like this, and it may be the cheapest way. So I would love, either today or offline later, an analysis or a perspective on the part of people as to why landfilling something like this isn't a perfectly fine solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody want to take a stab at that, or at least let him know if folks are able to get back to us on that?
Since nobody else is speaking, Chairman Barve, we will get you that information.
Terrific, thanks. I knew I could count on you.
Good job, Shane.
I didn't mean to slight anybody.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Shane is a former member of our committee, so he'll forgive us for giving him a hard time. I'm excited to now welcome several individuals who are working at the national level on a topic that has become more discussed in the country, in the US recently, but that is already in place in multiple countries around the world. And it has to do with this issue of responsibility for costs. And so I'm excited to welcome Scott Castle, the CEO of the Product Stewardship Institute, Susan Collins, the president of the Container Recycling Institute, and Sarah Nichols, the Sustainable Maine Director of the Natural Resources Council of Maine. So Scott, we're gonna turn it over to you. And we're doing pretty well on time now. You'll have 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll also be able to come back and ask more questions. So thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Delegate Learman and Chairman and members of the committee. Can I ask if you can see my slides?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, great. So I'm Scott Cassell. I'm the CEO and founder of the Product Stewardship Institute. We are a national nonprofit. We've been building the capacity for product stewardship and extended producer responsibility in the United States for the past 20 years. We have members from Maryland and all other state and local governments from around the country. EPR is a law that extends the producer's financial and their management responsibility for the products and packaging beyond the manufacturing stage through the consumer to the post-consumer stage of reuse, recycling, or safe disposal. Now, right now we have a fragmented system. The consumer purchases a product, and that is the end of the producer's responsibility. On the other hand, taxpayers, which often are not the consumer, they are paying the municipality for the recycling services. The municipality then manages it, takes on that burden. They hire haulers and recyclers to recycle. It's a fragmented and separate system. What EPR does is it brings it all together. The consumer pays the producer usually hires a stewardship organization. That organization manages and finances municipalities and haulers to collect the recycling and recyclers to process it. EPR has many benefits. First of all, it is funded by producers and consumers. It's not local governments and taxpayers as it is right now, and you know that you're not well equipped to handle the costs involved and the fluctuations of those costs. These programs are harmonized statewide. That reduces contamination of the materials. It does this through uniform education of consumers and citizens. And it's the same list of materials that are collected in each one of the counties as opposed to the fragmented system now. All that does is increases marketability of collected materials, and more materials are collected. EPR also fares better in the fluctuating recyclables markets. We've seen the China sword, where China has restricted recyclables from the United States and other countries. So EPR systems are more stable. They foster local end markets, and producers absorb those fluctuating costs, and not governments, again, which are not equipped to handle it. We have developed a whole system for developing models, including the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, by the way, which borrows on our model heavily. There's 20 elements, but I'm going to focus on 8 key elements for EPR. One is this legislation. It levels the playing field and creates a market-based solution. It defines the scope of products for what we mean by packaging. It defines who is a producer and how are they responsible. It also discusses the stewardship organization and has parameters for that. It discusses and outlines the financing mechanism, which often includes what we're starting to call eco-modulated fees, which means that we're incentivizing the aspects of materials like recycled content that we want to see more of, and we're discouraging, meaning added fees or a higher level of fee on products that are more costly to recycle or have greater environmental impacts. There are options for local governments in these systems, and there's state oversight of the industry's stewardship plan and the whole system as it is. So EPR has been adopted around the country just as it has globally. When we started in 2000, there were 8 laws on one product. Now there are 119 EPR laws on 14 products in 33 states. You can see most of those laws are in the Northeast, the West, and the Midwest of the country, the Great Lakes area. Around the world, this is older data, it's all we have, but you can see the trajectory. It continues to go up just like in the United States, but while we in the United States don't have any packaging EPR laws yet, we are working federally and with about a dozen states to use our model. They have bills that are in development, and Sarah will talk more about this, in Maine, in development, and we expect some of these to pass next year. Around the world, there are most laws on packaging, tires, and electronics, but others as well. Now here in Maryland, you have 4 very outdated EPR laws. They need to be upgraded. There are bills that have been introduced on paint, mattresses, pharmaceuticals, artificial turf, and batteries over the past couple of years. We have worked with many of you on these bills. These are the top prospects for Maryland next year, and I can talk more about that. And lastly, talking about key stakeholders, it is really a pleasure and an honor to be here to listen to all the understanding and the issues you have. You have all these key stakeholders, but others that are very special to Maryland. What you would need to have is a designated process and a framework in which the discussions take place. This is a great step, this committee. I applaud you, but there's another level to go, which is to figure out how to put these issues into a frame, and that has already been done. And there's a way to have these discussions so all these interests are brought out, because as a trained mediator, and our organization does multi-stakeholder meetings, hundreds of them, that the most sustainable agreements are ones that take into consideration all the different viewpoints. So with that, I will end at this point.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Susan Collins, we're going to turn over to you now, not the senator. Thanks for joining us.
Right, and I'm also going to try to share my screen. Here we go, and I'm just going to change the view. And you can let me know if that's working for you.
Yep, that looks good.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Susan Collins, and I'm the president of the Container Recycling Institute. My presentation today is about the benefits of container deposit laws as a key strategy for meeting circular economy goals and reducing litter. And I'm so glad that I followed Scott Cassell, because he really covered the key points on how extended producer responsibility works. And deposit laws for beverage containers are a form of extended producer responsibility that just layer on this extra feature of a deposit. So the key benefits I'm going to be talking about today are here. The incentive itself, that deposit and the refund that it provides to consumers, produces high recycling rates. The programs also produce very clean recycled materials for manufacturing because the materials are kept separate from each other. A key feature is that it reduces litter, and it shifts the end-of-life costs for used beverage containers to producers. Along the way, it also conserves energy, reduces greenhouse gases, and creates jobs, local jobs that can't be outsourced to other countries. So what we've seen in the last several years is tremendous growth in packaged beverage sales. It's both per capita consumption that's growing and population is growing. And in the US, we produce and consume almost 270 billion beverage containers per year. That's billion with a B. Most of that growth is coming from the number one beverage, which is bottled water. We now consume 70 billion bottles of water every year. Sales of water are now 25 times what they were in 1996. And this is what one person's beverage container consumption looks like. This is each person in the United States consumes about 822 bottles and cans, and cartons and juice boxes. The recycling rates for containers that are on deposit are about 3 times as high as for containers that aren't on deposit in the United States. So the bars on the left of this graph show the recycling rates for the 3 major material types for deposit containers, and the bars on the right are for non-deposit containers. Also, the vast majority of the food grade material comes from the 10 deposit states. These are the redemption rates in the 10 states that do have bottle bills. On the left, you'll see in blue, those are the states that have only a 5-cent deposit. On the right, the ones in orange have a 10-cent deposit. And the containers, or the states in the middle in green, have a hybrid of 5-cent and 10-cent deposits. The British Columbia law, which was passed 50 years ago in 1970, was originally called the Litter Act because these programs are so powerful in reducing beverage container litter. This graph shows what happened in Hawaii when they introduced their container deposit law in 2005. Within 2 years, beverage container litter was cut in half. This is a sampling of plastic reduction commitments from major companies. Recently, companies like Coca-Cola have pledged to make their packaging more recyclable or to have higher recycling rates or use higher levels of recycled content. Coca-Cola, for example, wants to use an average of 50% in their bottles. However, they've got a long way to go to get there. For PET, this graph shows recycled content in PET bottles over time. And right now we're only at about 7% recycled content in PET bottles. And that's because there just isn't enough material available due to our low recycling rates. And most of the material that's collected is not high enough quality. It's not food grade quality and can't be used into bottles again, but bottle bill material can. This year's pandemic has tested our recycling system. We saw shortages in the supply chain for manufacturing of bottles and cans because many of the deposit programs were shut down for several weeks. And so the manufacturers of these materials came out strongly in support of deposit laws because about half of the recycled content that they get comes from the 10 states with bottle deposit laws. We've seen studies around the world, more than 24 studies on the cost savings for municipalities resulting from container deposit laws because they have less garbage to dispose of, less litter to collect, and less recycling to pay for. There's been a tremendous growth of container deposit laws around the world. In the first 47 years, they covered only 300 million people. And now in just the last 3.5 years, we've seen another 330 million people come under new deposit laws. So they've more than doubled in just the last 3.5 years. It's really exciting growth. And this is my last slide. We saw a tremendous amount of interest in the United States as well. In 2019, 9 states introduced bills for new deposit laws, and 2 were introduced nationally in the US Congress and Senate. So who knows, maybe we'll be adding Maryland to this list soon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
All right, thank you, Delegate Learman, and good morning. Is it still morning? Chairman Barve, members of the committee, and fellow panelists. This has been a really interesting discussion so far, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. My name is Sarah Nichols, and I'm the Sustainable Maine Director for the Natural Resources Council of Maine. NRCM is an environmental advocacy organization in Maine. We have about 30 staff and have been around since 1959. I have the pleasure of being our resident trash talker. I work on all of the waste policies at the state and local level. Maine's really been a leader in product stewardship and EPR policies. We have one of the nation's most comprehensive and successful bottle bills. And we have about, 7 product stewardship programs. And just this past year, we're working on an EPR for packaging bill, LD 2104, that made it all the way to getting a favorable vote out of our Environment and Natural Resources Committee just in time for the legislature to shut down. Unfortunately, that bill and every other one in play is all but dead. So I've basically just been through EPR for packaging boot camp, and I'm happy to share my experience with you and honestly everybody around the country who is working on this, because I think I do agree with Scott that this policy is coming to the United States, and working together will only make it better the more harmonization we can do and the more sharing of information. So hopefully I can put some of this EPR in context for you. So in Maine, we started working on this several years ago because we were noticing our municipalities are struggling to manage our recycling programs, just getting worse over time. We've had a 50% goal of recycling 50% of our waste since 1989, have never achieved it under this current system that we have. We've plateaued. Using best available data, it's about 36% and falling. And honestly, that's part of the problem. So not only are municipalities struggling with all of this material, packaging is estimated to make up 30 to 40% of our municipal solid waste stream. It's costing our municipalities somewhere around $17 million a year to manage it, either through recycling or disposal. But one of the unsung heroes of these EPR laws is the amount of data that you would get. If with an EPR system, we would finally know what kinds of materials are coming into the state from where and where they're going. You can't manage what you can't measure. So it's to me, it's almost like no wonder why we aren't achieving a better recycling rate, because we just don't have the tools under this current system to do that. Recycling and waste reduction is important to improve and work on, and somebody is paying for it. This is what we're getting to earlier in this discussion today. Somebody is going to pay for it, and this is more about who is the right person or the right group to pay for that. And you can look all over the world. These EPR for packaging laws have existed for over 30 years in some places on every continent besides Antarctica. And they work. You can look at the relative cost per person cost for the output that you get. So you might spend the same amount of money managing it through taxes as you would through this EPR system, but get double the recycling rate. It's just more efficient to do it that way. So these programs work, and they make them more resilient. I think this pandemic has shown, you look to Canada, the provinces that have EPR for packaging in place have fared much better during this, during the market changes that we had with the China's national sword and this pandemic. They fared better than the provinces that don't have EPR. It's almost an insurance policy for your recycling programs and helps make them more resilient. And I did, I could talk about this all day and I'd love to get into the details, but I did want to, I took some notes, things that were said before. This under this EPR system, it's not a ban. So I know that some of the restaurants and retailers are concerned with banning of products. This essentially says you can use whatever materials you want, but if it's going to cost the communities a lot of money, you're going to have to pay for the luxury of using those materials. This law does protect, this type of law can protect small businesses. This is really important to us in Maine to make sure that the level of cost and impact really is on the largest offenders, the big corporations who produce most of these materials. When you look at other programs, they pay the bulk of the cost. So this time around, I'd love to work more closely with our retail community to modify our bill in a way that really works for Maine. And, I've heard a lot of words thrown out, this recyclable, making your products recyclable, and, that's wonderful, but recyclable doesn't equal recycled, and something's not recyclable if there's no bin to put it in. So say in Maine, a lot of towns are only taking 1 and 2 plastic. Sure, 3 through 7s are recyclable, but they're not, there's no bin to put it in. So they're not getting recycled. They're not recyclable in that sense. And then the one other point I wanted to make, if I have time, is this consumer versus taxpayer thing. I don't agree that consumers and taxpayers are the same group. It makes who pays definitely matters in this situation. And I like to think about, imagine if your taxes were paid, if your taxes paid for your electricity bill, and you're doing everything to reduce your electricity use in your home, and you look next door and your neighbor's got a heated pool and lights on all day, but it doesn't matter, because the town just pays for it no matter how much you use. That's not fair, and it's not going to help reduce, the energy use. So I like to think about it more that way. So I don't want to, I'd love to have time for more questions. So maybe I will just stop there, but I'm grateful to be part of this panel. I encourage you to continue on this path, and I'd love to share information with you as you do that.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So that concludes the panelists that we have signed up for today. Happy to take questions. If folks have questions, just put a note in the chat box and I'm happy to call on you. One question that I have, I'm not sure if it's for Scott or Sarah, is it sounds like there are different types of EPR packaging legislation, or different models, some that use a nonprofit, some that don't. And I wondered if you could just explain briefly sort of the different models that have been introduced in different state legislatures. You're both on mute.
Here, Scott, you go.
Thanks. Sarah, do you want me to give it a start?
Why don't you go, and then I'll follow up if I need to.
Okay. Yeah, there's different models, but this is what I was referring to before, in that what we've come up with, working with, our organization, we work with state and local government leaders on EPR around the country. So it's not like our little think tank figures it out ourselves. We work with people all over the country that are the experts in these areas, and including Sarah and including Susan. We're bringing these ideas together, and we've come up with 20 different elements for any EPR bill in the United States on any product, and including packaging. But we broke it down and we did a specific model for packaging that has about 19 different elements to it. And what that allows us to do, and has allowed us, is to come up with what the governments in general think is kind of like the basic considerations for any law. And we've gone through that. For example, I'll give you a scope of products. What does it mean by packaging? Where do you pick these things up from? How do you define a responsible party? And what you're referring to, Delegate Learman, was, how should these be managed? Should you have a for-profit or a nonprofit producer responsibility organization? There's lots of different questions, but the thing is, it needs to be bound in a framework and to discuss it. Now, there's 2 basic models. If I were to say, the basic models are, one, it's called municipal reimbursement, where municipalities more or less continue to collect their recycling, and they're reimbursed by the producer responsibility organization. So it's paid for by the producers, but they would be reimbursing the municipalities, and the municipalities can basically keep generally their contracts with haulers and their recyclers. And so the system stays more or less the same. Of course, producers don't like that because it's status quo and they want to change the system. That's the other type, where it's the producers are also paying into the system, but they have a greater degree of management control, which they feel gives greater efficiency and effectiveness to the system. And that really is the dynamic tension, what I see around the country in about a dozen different bills. and everything else is fairly uniform. It's not that different. Now, Maine, which Sarah's going to talk about here in a minute, I'd say probably stepped out further, and it wasn't Sarah doing that. It was more the state agency that stepped out further. They wanted a greater degree of control over the system because these systems have been in control for about 60 years. And frankly, the state and local governments are scared to make these changes themselves because they are used to providing a high level of service to their citizens, and the citizens expect it. Even though they know that they're at the end of the rope, these changes are very important and need to be discussed with the municipalities, with the states, with the waste management industry, with the producers, and then also many of the retailers and restaurants and others that are here. So with that, I'll hand the baton over.
Sure. So I guess I'll pick up at that fork in the road that you mentioned, Scott, with the full producer responsibility where they pay and manage the material, as opposed to that shared responsibility where the producers pay, but the municipalities manage and get reimbursed. So when I first started learning about EPR and thinking about EPR years ago, I was convinced that this full producer responsibility model was more efficient and it made more sense, and it just kind of takes municipalities out of the equation. But digging in Maine and seeing how that would impact folks here, it's just clear that that's not the way, at least to start. That's just not, it wouldn't fly here, and it's not fair to our municipalities to necessarily do that to them. It's more, and our state was concerned with creating this new monopoly in organization where, let's say, this producer responsibility organization, they would, could pick one hauler to service the whole entire state and leave all these other little haulers out to dry. That might not necessarily happen, but there's this concern that that would happen. And municipalities have made a lot of investments over the years in their trucks and their facilities and all the things, and and the transition of how that would happen. I just think it needs to happen more slowly and deliberately over time. So here in Maine, it was clear that we need to start with this shared reimbursement system, kind of stabilize our recycling infrastructure, and who's going to pay for it, work on expansion through the EPR system. And then at some point, if it makes sense, to start transitioning over the way, say, Quebec has done 15 years, they've done this reimbursement system, and now they're transitioning with the data and the thoughtfulness and the foresight over to this full producer responsibility system. And then just quickly on what Maine has done that's been unique is typically with product stewardship programs, or a PRO would just kind of come forward representing whatever producers are part of the program and submit a plan to the state. But Maine wanted to put out an RFP and actually select and contract with a PRO, and then have a lot more hands-on control that way. And they also didn't want to put a lot of the details in the statute. They wanted to leave a lot to rulemaking too. So we're kind of going through now to see what things really should be in the statute, what things really should be done through rulemaking, and what things need to be in what part of the process. So getting into the weeds is, fun.
Got it. Thank you. That's very helpful. I appreciate it. Delegate Love.
Thank you, Chair Lehrman. Two quick questions. First, to Scott and Susan, would you all be open to sharing your presentations? You had a lot of really interesting information in there that we had to go through quickly, and I'd like to go back into it. And then the second thing is, I've talked to all three of you, and it's been wonderful, and I appreciate that as I work on our bottle bill and EPR for batteries. And one of the things that I am asking you to talk a little bit more about, all three of you, is working with our small businesses and EPR. A lot of the businesses are concerned about the bottle bills because they don't want to have to be responsible for taking them back or having those machines. For the batteries, they don't want to have to be responsible for having the container. Can you talk a little bit about ways in which the areas that have these laws have been able to work with the small businesses to not add burdens on them?
Susan, you want to go first on that? Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of the existing laws have either a de minimis requirement. This is both, it impacts both retailers and beverage producers. So sometimes small producers are exempted from certain requirements of the bill. The UDOL bill, for instance, the small beverage producers, if they have less than $1 million in sales or produce less than 1 ton of beverage packaging material, then they are exempt from certain requirements of the UDOL legislation. In state after state after state, there are different requirements for small retailers versus large retailers. It's not always that way. Sometimes all retailers in the state are treated exactly the same way. But in many of the cases, it's dependent upon the quantity of beverages that you sell. So you can certainly tailor it in your state to your businesses in your state.
I can follow up with Susan and talk about some of the other products. So for example, I think you're talking small businesses like retailers, Delegate Love, which are, might be required or have a role in the takebacks of the products. And so I'd say the overarching method is voluntary, that the retailers voluntarily participate. That is really the preference. You want them to understand that there's frankly a business advantage for them to get people into their stores, to provide a community service, whether it's paint retailers, you have batteries, small retailers or others that want to get people into the store. Even retail pharmacies taking back the medication. So we find on a whole that the retailers will step up, knowing that they don't have to pay for the disposal. They don't have to pay for those containers. It is a cost for them in sense of educating their staff and their staff turnover, their space, and not all retailers can do this. So we think it's better at the private sector that the retailers be able to say, yes, we want to do this, because there are some financial and other reasons to get the customer loyalty. I developed the first computer take-back program for Staples here in the United States 15 years ago. And I talked to individual residents, and they said that their customer loyalty to Staples, that they had this take-back program, was increased. And so Staples, continued, and it went into a national program. So I think that, and they're not a small business, let's say, but they're, small and large. It's not good to force them if you don't have to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Delegate Clark.
You out there, Jerry?
Yeah, are you? Jerry, are you on mute? I don't see his name anymore. Maybe something happened. Maybe I don't know, maybe he got disconnected. Well, I think his was the last question that we had. Unless, does anybody else, any other questions? Going once, going twice?
I can, Delegate Learman, sure. I can address Chairman Barvey's question about the syringes directly. There are medical sharps, there are medical sharps EPR laws. They go sort of hand in hand with pharmaceutical EPR laws, but that's the way that those have been handled, and they would be collected with the syringes themselves. Right now, there's not a way to separate out and recycle the plastics, although those have been looked at before, but they are collected because the needles are so hurtful, and there are billions of them in hospitality industry, the waste stream, you name it, they're a problem. So a number of states have started to introduce bills on medical sharps. And again, that's paid for by the producers and set up in a very similar way. Excuse me, very similar way, very similar way to other EPR laws.
Well, I'm. Interesting. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I said that there's hope. There's definitely ways that they've been dealt with, and I'd be happy to give you more information about that.
Well, I actually work for a company that picks up medical and hazardous waste, and medical waste for the most part is incinerated because of the need to get rid of infectious materials. And in fact, all the environmental companies in the state of Maryland pretty much use a high temperature incinerator in Curtis Bay. And it's, the primary objective with respect to sharps and other medical appliances and syringes is to burn it to get rid of the infectious materials. So from a medical waste disposal standpoint, that's the state of the art right now. But those incinerators have to be very high temperature. They're not your standard power generating incinerators. They're intended to sterilize everything that goes through them at as low a cost as possible so that it isn't a cost burden on the medical system.
Thank you. Is there an EPR program for bottle bills or for bottles or how does the deposit program for bottles work in conjunction with EPR for packaging?
So that's a couple of questions there, so I'll take them one at a time. So almost all of the container deposit laws in the world are operated as EPR programs, meaning the producers manage the program and the producers finance it. They range widely. So in the United States, they're actually operated as one of the subsets of EPR that's called individual producer responsibility. So instead of the producers coming together and forming a producer responsibility organization, they are each individually liable for the management of their products and paying for the cost of managing those products. So they may join together and form a collective pickup agent party that can go around and pick up all of the containers from the retailers and redemption centers. But as a matter of the law, they are individually responsible. There's just a couple of exceptions, like the state of California and the state of Hawaii, where the producers pay their deposits over to the state and the state agency manages the program. So it's sort of half and half EPR. It's paid for by the producers, but it's managed by the municipalities, much in the same way as what Sarah was talking about municipal reimbursement. So yeah, out of more than 60 programs in the world, there's only a couple that are managed by state agencies. The rest are all managed by the producers, and most of those are done so with a producer responsibility organization managing the whole thing.
Okay, that's helpful. Sounds like Delegate might be back. So Delegate Clark, you are on. Delegate Clark,
you need to unmute yourself.
Yep.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Thank you. I lost my iPad. Battery went dead.
It happens.
Yeah, these long meetings. My question has to do with the deposit bills, particularly the bottle deposits on beverages. Out of all the states that have that, can one of the panelists please give me some idea of which method of doing the deposit, collecting deposits and refunding deposits seem to work the best?
Sure, I can tackle that one. I wouldn't say that there's one system that works best, because I've seen identical systems in different provinces or different states where one has a very high recovery rate and the other one doesn't. There are certain elements that lead to success. As I mentioned in my presentation, the 5-cent deposits that exist in most of the United States are really outdated. All of the Canadian provinces have gone to 10 cents now. Some of the US states have gone to 10 cents, and that's really a meaningful deposit value in this time. We are seeing a huge trend toward managing these systems cooperatively through a producer responsibility organization. And we're seeing those producer responsibility organizations get much smarter about the way they manage things, requiring a lot more compaction of materials and really paying attention to their transportation costs, reducing transportation costs through compaction. The programs that have a lot of feedback from the public and a process for that, either through an advisory committee or through a stakeholder consultation process, those are some best practices. So I can't say that one system works better than the other, because I can point out different systems that both work really well. It has more to do with whether or not they have a really good manager in place and enough oversight by both the public and the state agency or the provincial authority to make sure that they have a spirit of continuous improvement. Like the program in Oregon is really stellar in that way, that they keep inventing new ways that are consumer pleasing for the consumers to return their containers. And they keep going back to the legislature and asking the legislature to allow them to expand the program or allow them to bring in innovation. And it's been better for the program and better for consumers, and the state agency seems to love it, and everybody seems to be pretty happy in Oregon.
Okay, and my other question is, who in most of these bottle bill states who collects the deposit? Does deposit come from the manufacturer? Is added onto the cost from the manufacturer to the retailer? Or does the retailer collect the deposit at site of sale? And also when you refund the money back?
Yep, it's
is that done? How is that done?
It's pretty much just like what you said, and it's just like what you see in the normal sales process. So in a normal sales process, it would be the beverage distributor who would sell the beverage to the retailer, and then the retailer sells it to the consumer. So the deposit is the same way. The deposit gets charged by the distributor to the retailer, and then the retailer charges it to the consumer. And then that whole thing goes in reverse when someone takes their container back. So if somebody takes their container back either to a redemption center or to a retailer, the consumer gets the money back, and then that retailer or redemption center has to get the money back from the distributor.
Okay, so for the retailer theirself, wouldn't the retailer, when the retailer has to pass on the deposit of 10 cents, or which would be for a 6-pack of beer would be 60 cents, or a 12-pack, it could be $1.20, and they pass that on to the consumer. In this day and time, most transactions in most stores anymore are done with credit cards or debit cards in some way, shape, or form. So the retailer itself actually has a cost that affects them by charging the deposit because of the cost to process the credit card. So when you have a store, let's say you have a store that sells $1 million worth of beer a year, and you start figuring out, the collection of the deposit, and the factor in that maybe 85 to 90% of every transaction is a credit card or debit card with a fee involved in it. That can be a pretty substantial cost to the retailer. Now, $1 million worth of retailer in the beer business is a small retailer. That's a guy that's really struggling to just keep going because there's not that much margin to start with. How do you propose that we be able to protect that retailer from having to incur the cost of up to 2% of that deposit money? It could be $1.20, a 12-pack, or $2.40 for a case of beer or something like that. Shouldn't they be able to protect themselves and not have to? Why couldn't we just have the producer? If you have the producer sell it to the retailer and then the retailer add the deposit, you're putting a cost burden on that retailer. how do they make themselves whole on that? How did they collect that and get it back and make themselves whole?
Sure. Well, I think there's two things. One of them is that just like the retailer makes themselves whole on the deposit in the fact that they pay the deposit to the distributor and then they receive it from the consumer. So their net cost is zero because those two things cancel each other out. Similarly, when people return bottles and cans, that's a payout from the retailer. So when somebody turns in that slip when they're making a purchase, that amount is deducted from their total bill. You know, if they've refunded, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that still does not make you whole on the processing charge of the credit card. If somebody comes in and brings the bottles and stuff back, they're not going to want to put a refund on a credit card. They're going to want the cash back.
Both the refund and the charge go on the credit. Both I do this. I return my bottles at the store. I pay a deposit. I mean, I see this on my own grocery store receipt every time. I pay the deposit, and I'm also returning bottles in the same transaction. So the $2 goes on my receipt and the $2 comes off my receipt. So they zero each other out. So the amount of my credit card transaction isn't impacted by that.
But if you don't take it back to the same exact store, the store you bought it at is incurring a cost when they sell it to you on the credit card.
Sure.
Okay. If you take it to the store down the street to refund, banks aren't giving you a refund on credit cards to the consumer. The retail establishment has a cost involved of up to 2 to 3% on every bit of a deposit money that you collect. So how do you propose to keep the small mom and pops, although, with the pandemic, we're going to have less and less small mom and pop operations out here. How do you propose that we be able to keep them whole?
Sure. Well, the other piece that's really common in deposit laws is the handling fee that's paid to retailers. So nearly all the states in the United States have a handling fee that is paid to retailers that reimburses them for their costs of processing the containers.
And who sets that up? Would that be in the legislation?
Yes.
And could you send me some examples from other states of what that handling cost is and how much the retailer gets back so I can see? Because there's so many inequities already for the retailers. When we collect sales tax and it's collected with a credit card and you pay the sales tax at monthly, you get a little stipend back from the state. But the stipend's not enough that it covers the cost of using a credit card to collect the tax. So retailers are already subsidizing the collection of sales tax. I don't want to see, and I am totally opposed to retailers having to subsidize the collection of deposit money. That's just my personal opinion. I've been a retailer for 40 some years, and
no, I think you're raising important points, and I'm hopeful that Susan and others can get back to us with some. I think that you've tried to answer some of it, Susan, but it'd be helpful to see it a little bit more clearly articulated, perhaps in a letter or through other examples. And it would be great if you could follow up with Delegate Clark to have a one-on-one conversation about how this works in practice, because that's certainly not an issue I would have thought of. So I appreciate Delegate Clark raising it. Thank you, Delegate.
Go ahead.
So we're right at noon. I'm going to let people go, but I just want to thank everybody so much for joining us today. Chair Barve, do you have any?
Only that this is a terrific briefing, and it's brought up new questions that we need to have answered. And so I'm very happy it all worked out the way it did. And I want to emphasize to all the players here that we will make an effort to listen to absolutely everybody who might not have been included. We're going to attempt to do that.
Yes, thank you so much to everybody. We'll have our final work group meeting on October 8th at 9:30 a.m. It is our plan to take some limited public comment at that time. We are going to put out a link to sign up, and we will probably only have time for 20, 25 or so people. So if one thing I would ask all of the groups who are on, you've had a chance to speak. And so, we don't want 10 members from X or Y advocacy group all signing up. We will defer to people who have not had a chance to speak yet or to make their viewpoint known, just so we can make sure that we're hearing from a wide array of people. Thank you, everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great Thursday. And please feel free to keep in touch. Thank you.